There's a scene near the end of the fourth season of The Wire, maybe 40 seconds long, with no dialogue that matters, and I'd put it against any scene in the history of television for sheer compressed devastation. A police sergeant drops a 13-year-old boy off at a group home. The boy, who has just lost the only real home he ever had, turns at the door and asks the sergeant, with a smile that has already curdled into something else, whether he's going to look out for him, whether he promises, whether he's got his back. The sergeant can't answer. The boy goes inside. And the sergeant sits in his car in the parking lot and beats the steering wheel until his hands hurt, screaming at nothing because there is no one in the car to scream at except himself. The sergeant is Ellis Carver. The boy is Randy Wagstaff. And the question that scene plants in every single person who watches it, the question people are still asking in every comment thread and every rewatch podcast 20 years later, is brutally simple. Why didn't he just take him? Carver is single, employed, stable, and physically wrecked by what's happening to this kid. The boy is bright, likable, entrepreneurial, and about to be fed into a machine that everyone, including Carver, knows exactly what it does to boys like him. The math seems obvious, the rescue seems available, and the show, deliberately, coldly, with full knowledge of what the audience wants, does not allow it to happen. I want to spend this essay taking that question completely seriously, because I think the answer is not one thing, it's a stack of things, and the stack goes all the way down to what this show fundamentally believed about the world. The surface answer is bureaucratic and takes one scene to deliver. The real answer takes 4 seasons to assemble, and it runs through who Carver was when we met him, who rebuilt him, what he owed, and what the series was willing to let personal redemption actually purchase, which, as we'll see, is both more and much less than the audience hoped. The usual honesty clause before we start connecting dots. This is an interpretation, built from what's on screen and from the show's well-documented philosophy, and where I'm inferring motive inside a character's head rather than pointing at text, I'll flag it. The Wire is a show that rewards being argued with. Argue with me. But the events themselves, the chain of them, are not in dispute, and the chain is where we have to start, because my central metaphor for this whole essay comes straight out of police work itself. Chain of custody. The principle that a piece of evidence is only worth anything if you can account for every hand that held it, every transfer, every gap. Break the chain anywhere, and everything downstream of the break is compromised, no matter how carefully it's handled afterward. I want you to watch Randy Wagstaff move through this stories as a piece of evidence moves through a broken department, passed from hand to hand, each transfer logged nowhere, each holder assuming the next one has it covered. And I want you to watch Carver, at the very end of that chain, try to do the one thing the system makes structurally impossible: take personal custody. But first, the ground floor, because you cannot understand what Carver's final failure means until you understand what his starting point was, and his starting point was genuinely low. The Ellis Carver of the first season is, not to put too fine a point on it, part of the problem. He and his partner Herc are the show's twin avatars of everything brainless in drug war policing, all muscle, no craft, no curiosity. Watch what they actually do in that first year. They roll into the towers on a pointless show-of-force raid that spirals into a full-blown riot. A neighborhood set on fire for nothing. When a drunk detective sucker punches a handcuffed adjacent kid named Bodie and Bodie hits back, they stomp him, because that's the game as they understand it. The corner disrespects you, you answer with your hands. And in the moment that defines their early careers, during a raid that turns up a pile of cash, the two of them simply take some, skim it, stick it in their pockets like a tip, and then squirm when the count comes up light. Petty brutality, petty theft, and in Carver's specific case, something worse, betrayal. Because Carver spends that first season secretly reporting on his own unit to the bosses downtown, feeding information about Daniel's detail up the chain in exchange for the promise of a promotion. He is, in the show's own moral vocabulary, exactly the kind of police the institution manufactures on purpose: careerist, loyal upward instead of downward, playing the game instead of doing the work. And then he gets his sergeant's stripes, the stripes he snitched for, and Daniels, who knows precisely what Carver did, delivers the speech that functions as the thesis statement for the next 4 years of this character's life. It's quiet and it's surgical. Daniels tells him that he's about to have young officers looking to him for everything, watching how he carries himself, and that what he shows them is what they'll become. Show loyalty, they learn loyalty. Show them it's about the work, it'll be about the work. Show them some other kind of game, and that's the game they'll play. No punishment, no lecture about the snitching. Just a mirror, held up at the exact moment Carver has gotten what he schemed for, with an implicit question hanging in the air: what exactly are you going to be? The show plants that seed, and then patiently, the way only this show ever was, spends years growing it. Here's the first breadcrumb of the transformation, and it comes from the man who matters most of this essay besides Carver himself, Major Bunny Colvin. Third season. Colvin, the Western District Commander in the twilight of his career, catches Carver doing what Carver has always done, chasing corner kids around a housing project, cracking heads, winning nothing. and he sits him down and dismantles him. Not cruelly, diagnostically. He tells him, in substance, that what Carver is doing isn't policing, it's soldiering, and that the difference is everything. A soldier holds ground against an enemy. A police officer serves a place, and you cannot serve a place you don't know. Colvin points at the neighborhood and asks Carver, in effect, what he actually knows about it, the names, the families. The kid on the corner who's his mother, where does he sleep? And Carver has nothing because in 5 years of working these streets, he has learned them the way an occupying army learns terrain, choke points, and threats. Nothing else. It's one of the great mentorship scenes in the series precisely because Colvin isn't offering inspiration. He's offering an indictment with a door in it. And Carver, to his enormous credit, walks through the door. This is the part of the arc people undersell because it happens in the margins of the flashier Hamstrom storyline. Colvin's radical experiment, the de facto legalization zones, ends in ruin for Colvin, but it functions as a classroom for Carver. Managing those zones forces him to do policing that has nothing to do with raids, keeping order among people he cannot simply arrest, negotiating, mediating, learning the ecosystem. And when the 4th season opens, we meet a genuinely different man wearing the same face. Watch the small proofs the show stacks up. Carver knows the kids on his corners by name now, knows their situations, banters with them, extends credit and calls in favors. The season pointedly gives him a foil in Officer Walker, a Western uniform who breaks a boy's fingers for stealing a car, so you can see the two available versions of the job standing side by side, the soldier and the police. Carver has become the thing Colvin described. He is, by the 4th season, arguably the single best example in the entire series of an institution's product reforming himself from the inside, one honest inch at a time. Which is exactly why the show does what it does to him next. Because The Wire is not in the business of rewarding growth, it's in the business of pricing it. Enter Randy. And here I want to slow down and lay the chain of custody out link by link, event by event, because the question of why Carver didn't adopt Randy is inseparable from the question of how Randy was destroyed. And the how is a masterpiece of distributed, deniable, systemic failure in which almost nobody does anything monstrous and everybody does something small. Randy Wagstaff is a hustler in the sweetest sense of the word. The kid selling candy out of his backpack at a markup, saving for a store of his own someday. Charming, quick, beloved by his foster mother, Miss Anna, the strictest and warmest of the season's parent figures. His connection to the street is glancing, the way all 4 boys' connections start out glancing. One day, little Kevin, an older corner hand, pays Randy a few dollars to deliver a message. Tell Lex that his girl wants to meet him at the playground that night. Randy delivers it. It's an errand. It's nothing. Except the message is bait, and Lex walks to that playground and into the hands of Chris and Snoop, Marlo Stanfield's killers, and becomes one of the bodies in the vacant houses. Randy didn't kill anyone. Randy carried a sentence he couldn't read. But now he knows something, and in this world, knowing is a disease. First link in the chain, and watch how mundane the transfers are. Randy gets jammed up at school over an incident in the bathrooms, hauled into the office, threatened with police with juvenile booking, and in pure 13-year-old panic, he reaches for the only card he has. He blurts that he knows things about the murders, about the bodies. The adults in that room now hold him. Second link, the information travels from the school into the police department, where it lands, of all the desks in all of Baltimore, on Herc's. Herc, Carver's old partner, unreformed, recently and accidentally promoted far past his abilities, flailing, desperate for a case that will save his career. The single worst possible custodian in the entire institution, and the boy is handed to him not through malice but through routing. Third link. Herc uses Randy's information to hunt Chris Stanfield style, and he does it with all the delicacy he showed skimming cash in Season 1. He hauls little Kevin into the station in broad daylight, visibly, carelessly, and lets slip in the course of things enough specifics that Kevin can reverse engineer where the information came from. Then he loses interest, loses evidence, botches surveillance, and moves on, having extracted what he needed and secured nothing he promised. He told Randy he'd protect him. He told him the way you tell a kid anything, words as lubricant, and Carver's entire early career flashes before your eyes, because that was the game they both used to play. Herc never stopped. Fourth link, and now the chain is dragging Randy underwater. Little Kevin tells Marlowe's people what he's figured out. Marlowe has Kevin killed for the exposure, another body in the vacants, and the word goes out onto the corners with the efficiency this world reserves for exactly one kind of news. Randy Wagstaff is a snitch, and the 5th season hasn't even started pricing what that word costs. The beating comes at school first, boys stomping him in a stairwell while the word snitch does the actual damage. Carver, now fully in the picture, does everything the reformed version of himself knows how to do. He leans on the machinery. He gets a patrol posted on Miss Anna's house. He reassures Randy, and this is the sentence that will hang over everything he tells him in substance, that he will take care of it, himself, personally. It's the promise of a man who has learned to mean his promises, deployed into a system that does not honor them. Because the protection is a police post, and police posts obey manpower math, not oaths, and the coverage gets thinned and shuffled the way coverage always does. And one night, with the watch effectively off, someone puts a firebomb through Miss Anna's window. Randy gets out. Miss Anna not intact. She's burned horrifically, hospitalized, permanently unable to care for him. The only home Randy has ever trusted is destroyed as a direct, traceable consequence of him once talking to people who promised they'd look out for him. And so we arrive at the hospital corridor, and the scene this entire essay orbits. Carver, running on guilt and adrenaline, corners the woman from social services and asks the question the audience is begging someone to ask. What if somebody wanted to take him, foster him? Somebody like, and he says it, somebody like me. And the woman doesn't laugh at him, which matters. She takes him seriously enough to tell him the truth. It doesn't work like that. There's certification, background investigation, home study, training classes, months of process, none of which can be waived because a sergeant is standing in a hallway with his heart broken. And underneath the procedure, gently, she asks him the harder question, the one that isn't bureaucratic at all, whether he has really thought about what he's proposing. A single man working police shifts in the Western District, taking permanent custody of a traumatized 13-year-old he mostly knows from the street. And Carver, and you can watch it happen on his face, does the most honest thing he does in the entire series. He doesn't argue, because some part of him recognizes that she's right on both counts, and that his offer, however real the love behind it, is also something else. A man trying to personally absorb a debt the institution ran up in the moment of maximum guilt with no plan beyond the guilt. The system says no in the language of paperwork. But the show is careful, I think, to let you see that the no has a second layer, and the second layer is Carver's own, and it's not cowardice. It's the terrible sobriety of a man who has finally learned the difference between a promise and a wish. Then the group home, then the doorway, then the question, "You gonna look out for me? You promise?" Delivered in the exact cadence of every assurance every adult has ever broken over this boy, so that the words themselves have become the wound. Then the steering wheel. Now the tangent, and this one isn't optional, because the show in the same season, in the same city, runs the counterexample right next to Carver, and the comparison is where the deepest answer lives. Because one of the four boys does get saved, and he gets saved by adoption, and the man who does it is Bunny Colvin. Namon Bryce, son of a Barksdale enforcer, raised by a mother who demands he take up the family trade, is taken in by Colvin and his wife at the end of the season, and the epilogue shows him thriving, debate podiums instead of corners. So the show is not saying rescue is impossible. It's showing you with almost cruel precision the exact conditions under which rescue is possible, and then showing you that Carver and Randy meet none of them. Look at the checklist. Colvin is retired outside the machine with a pension, a house, a wife, a stable two-adult household with decades of ballast. Carver is active duty, single, mid-career, inside the machine up to his neck. Namon has a living father, and the show gives us the extraordinary scene where Colvin visits Weebay in prison and asks him man-to-man for his son, and Weebay, a multiple murderer performing the single most redemptive act available to him, says yes, and makes it stick with the boy's mother. There was a hand with the legal and moral authority to place Namon into a new life, and that hand opened. Randy is a ward of the state. There is no father to petition, no mother to persuade, no human hand holding him at all. Only the foster bureaucracy, which does not open for love, only for process. Namon's rescue required an outsider with resources, a family behind him, a parent's blessing, and even then it reads on screen as a miracle. One boy pulled from the water, while the season pointedly drowns the other three. The show built the two cases side by side so you could see it. What happened with Namond wasn't a policy. It was a lottery win. And Carver was never holding a ticket, only a badge. Still not done, because the fifth season closes both arcs, and it closes them in opposite directions, and the scissering of those two endings is the real kicker of this whole story. Randy, when we see him again, is in the group home, and the group home has done what everyone knew it would. He's bigger, harder, colder, his face rebuilt around the fights he's had to win, the sweetness burned off entirely. When a detective comes asking questions about the old murders, Randy delivers the bitterest line in the series' entire 5-year run, asking with a dead smile whether the detective is going to help him, whether he promises, whether he'll look out for him. The words have completed their journey from Herc's glib assurance to Carver's sincere one to a boy's sarcastic epitaph for every adult he ever met. And Carver in that same final season completes his transformation in the other direction. When one of his own officers, Colicchio, loses his mind during a routine detail and assaults a civilian for essentially nothing, Carver does the unthinkable. The thing that gets you frozen out of every cop bar in the city. He writes it up, charges his own man. And when Herc, of all people, confronts him about it, betraying a fellow officer over something so small, Carver answers with 3 words that are the entire series in miniature and the direct, deliberate inversion of everything he and Herc used to be. It all matters. He makes lieutenant by the end. The institution which punishes so much quietly promotes the one man in it who learned. So hold the 2 endings in your hands at once, because this is the answer to the question, or at least the deepest layer of it. The show gave Carver the redemption and gave Randy the bill. And it did that on purpose, because The Wire's most heretical belief, the one that separates it from effectively every other drama ever made, is that individual transformation, real, hard-won, genuine transformation of the self, does not scale. Carver becoming a good man does not save Randy, because Randy was never endangered by Carver's character. He was endangered by a chain, a school that traded a boy's secret for order, a department that routed him to its worst officer, a protection detail that dissolved into a duty roster, a foster system that processes children like backlog, and no reformed sergeant, however sincere, constitutes a chain. The Hollywood version of this story ends with the adoption, and the adoption ending would have been a lie the show had spent 4 seasons dismantling. The lie that systems fail but heroes compensate, that love at the last minute is a substitute for structure. The Wire looked at that ending, understood exactly how badly the audience wanted it, and refused, because the refusal was the point. One boy per season gets the miracle, and even the miracle required a retired man's whole remaining life and a murderer's blessing. The rest get the chain. So let me lay out the 3 readings, as always, and for once I think all 3 are true simultaneously, and the show intends all 3. The first is the procedural reading, the literal answer.
Carver didn't adopt Randy because he couldn't, not in the window that mattered.
Certification takes months. The firebomb took a night. Crisis time and bureaucratic time run on different clocks, and the mismatch between those clocks is one of the quiet villains of the entire series. By the time any process could have made Carver a legal guardian, the group home would already have done its work, and the show's 5th season shows you exactly what that work was. On this reading, the tragedy is friction. The machine cannot move at the speed of an emergency, even when a good man is pushing. The second is the character reading, and it's harsher and more interesting. Carver didn't take Randy because in the hallway, confronted with the reality of what he was offering, he told himself the truth, that his impulse was tangled up with guilt, his promise, his patrol, his old partner's mess, and that a rescue powered by absolution tends to run out of fuel, that a single sergeant on Western District shifts was offering a home he didn't actually have. You can read his silence in that hospital corridor as failure, and plenty do. I read it as the most painful kind of integrity. The reformed Carver's defining trait is that he no longer says things he can't back. And in that hallway, he declined to make one more beautiful promise to Randy Wagstaff that the world wouldn't let him keep. The knucklehead of Season 1 would have said yes on the spot, meant it for a week, and added one more broken assurance to the pile. The man Daniels and Colvin built said nothing, and hated himself, and drove the boy to the group home personally, because being present for the consequence was the only honest thing left to offer. And then, and this is the part I find genuinely moving, he converted the debt. He couldn't save the boy in front of him, so he spent the rest of the series building the thing that might save the next one. Charging Colicchio, holding the line, becoming the supervisor who shows the young police that it's about the work. It all matters is not a slogan. It's a payment plan on a debt named Randy. And the third reading is the authorial one, the cold one, the one above the characters entirely. Randy wasn't adopted because this show believed that showing you the rescue would have been a form of lying. The series was built, its creator said in every interview they ever gave, as an argument that America's institutions grind up the individuals inside them regardless of anyone's intentions, and Season 4 was that argument aimed at children. 4 boys, 4 trajectories, 1 lottery ticket. Save Randy too, and the season becomes a story about how the right adults fix things. Lose Randy, specifically into the arms of the one character who had grown the most, who wanted most desperately to fix it, and the season becomes what it is. Proof that the machine's appetite exceeds the goodness of any person standing inside it. Carver had to be good by the end for the ending to land. His reform is not the consolation of the tragedy, it's the mechanism of it. The show needed you to watch its best case officer, its walking proof that people can change, slam his hands against a steering wheel in a group home parking lot, so that you would finally stop asking, why didn't he save the boy, and start asking the question the entire series was built to force.
Why was one decent man in a parked car ever the
only thing standing between a child and the machine? Here's where I'll leave it. The chain of custody was never Carver's to hold. He was one link, late in the sequence, and he was, by the time Randy reached him, the strongest link the chain had, which is exactly why his failure is the one that hurts. Every hand before his had passed the boy along carelessly, and the one hand that finally closed around him with real intent discovered that intent has no legal standing, no certification, no override code. The show's answer to why didn't Carver adopt Randy is, in the end, the show's answer to everything, because no one is allowed to matter that much, that fast, in a system built to make sure of it. And its challenge, the thing it hands you as the car pulls away, is Carver's own 3 words, offered not as comfort but as assignment. It all matters, the promise you don't make, the report you do right, the name you bother to learn. None of it saved Randy Wagstaff. All of it together, held long enough, early enough, by enough hands, is the only thing that ever could have. That's the trail. One boy passed hand to hand until the chain broke, and one man at the end of it learning the exact weight of everything he'd become too late to lift. Take care of yourselves out there.